Hey, what's up, people? It's your man's Darvell here with another quick hit for you. Get your knowledge up, get your focus in. Let's talk about what is this stuff, Project 2025. So, Project 2025, this is a thing where they are very specifically doing one thing that we all know very well in the community, in the black community, as some people call the community. Listen, they are telling you what they want to do, so you need to believe them. As we say, in other words, when people show you who they are, believe them. Project 2025 is an initiative by the Heritage Foundation, and it's aimed at preparing for a conservative administration. But let me stop there for a second. Half of you probably gonna be like, who's the Heritage Foundation? So let's flip over and let's talk about who is the Heritage Foundation real quick, because you kind of need to understand who these folks is. All right, Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation, this is Wikipedia we're looking at here. Heritage Foundation, sometimes referred to simply as Heritage, is an activist American conservative think tank based in Washington, D.C., founded in 1973. It took a leading role in the conservative movement in the 1980s, including the presidency of Ronald Reagan, whose policies were taken from Heritage Foundation studies, including its mandate for leadership. Woo! The Heritage Foundation has had significant influence in U.S. public policy making, and it has historically been ranked amongst the most influential public policy organizations in the United States. In 2010, it founded sister organization Heritage Action, an influential activist force in conservative and Republican politics. Note that they say conservative and Republican politics. It's key to make sure we understand that let me put it this way. Basically, most Republicans are conservative. I think probably all Republicans are conservative, but not all conservatives are Republicans. So basically, they have a huge overlap between conservatives and Republicans, but that's not exclusively the only way that it can go. There are different facets of the society that also are conservative, that are not aligned or not part of the Republican Party. So they have had an influential activist force in conservative and Republican politics. Heritage leads Project 2025, which is an expansive plan aimed at reorganizing and transforming the federal government. All right, so that's Project 2025. All right, so as I was saying, this Project 2025, well, that explains the Heritage Foundation. But as I was saying, this Project 2025 is preparing for a conservative administration to take office in 2025, i.e., the presumptive, at this time on July 7th, 2024, the presumptive Republican nominee will be the leader of a conservative administration in 2025, which would be, as far as we know right now, Donald J. Trump. Okay, so Donald Trump being that person who they expect to take office in 2025 should the Republicans actually win. So the project itself focuses on creating a comprehensive policy agenda and providing training for, I'm talking thousands of potential appointees that they will put into administration right away to run this situation for them. They're talking about training thousands of people to ensure that the conservative policies and governance strategies that they want implemented are effectively implemented properly and immediately if a Republican president is elected. So the project has a lot of things going into it. I'm going to try to hit some of the highlights that I think are interesting, and we're going to go through it using some actual examples. But I want to make sure you understand that this project is not a small feat. It includes a lot of details. It's so detailed, it's scary. And that's what's making the news right now, right? The project includes detailed plans for various government departments and agencies, almost everyone you could think of, emphasizing deregulation, reducing the size of the government, and advancing conservative values in areas across the spectrum, including education, healthcare, and national security. So there are key elements of Project 2025. I'm going to just give you a high level, and then we're going to start unpacking some of the details just quickly as we can, so you have an understanding of the breadth and depth of this situation. So first, comprehensive policy blueprints and federal agency restructuring are included in this plan. That means that there are details for everything, including various sectors like education, healthcare, national security, as I mentioned, economic policy, and regulatory reform, with the aim most importantly, of aligning with federal policies, aligning these federal policies to conservative values. So that's out the gate. They're going to change as much as they can to be in alignment with conservative values. Specifically, what they want to build a lot of these things around are the normal heterosexual American family. You're going to see that throughout the document that they've published and everything that they've got out there for their project 2025. They are gung-ho focused on one thing, and that's supporting the traditional heterosexual American family with traditional values. So that's going to be a big trend in this situation. The second part is selection, preparation, and training programs for those thousands of people that I mentioned earlier. They're going to be political appointees essentially, and they're going to be essentially filling, and I'm going to show you in a minute, they're going to be filling a ton of civil servant jobs that otherwise would have been direct applications by actual civilians. Now they're going to change the classification of those jobs so that they have to be appointed by somebody who's been appointed by essentially the administration of the president. So now they have people that they're putting in a position that they've already pre-qualified. These folks will be selected and prepared and trained to ensure loyalty and understanding and dedication to the mission. They're not playing. So the third area is going to be judicial appointments. We know they already have the Supreme Court, but there are some opportunities around judicial appointments. So they're going to have a recommendation schedule for judicial appointments that reflects conservative legal philosophies, ensuring that the judiciary interprets the Constitution in a way that aligns with conservative principles. So I know this all sounds like these guys might be, coming through with the full book in the Monty, but this project has been years in the making, and it was actually published in 2023. But the Democrats and most other people weren't paying that much attention to it. Part of the strategy from the Democratic side of the aisle was that if they start giving it attention, like earlier this year or back in 2023, if they were to give it attention, it might give it some undue legitimacy, some unnecessary energy. It might actually help bring in more conservatives into the fight to actually help them win earlier on. So they really just avoided talking about it, but now it's hitting the news cycle. And so this was actually published in 2023, and it was at one point available on Amazon because it's a book. The book is called A Mandate. What do they call it? Mandate for Leadership. And so all this stuff I'm going to talk about comes out of a single book that was published in 2023. And the ideas in it, however, are honestly, they're familiar to us. Like, as whether you consider yourself conservative, liberal, Democrat, Republican, the things that are going to be in this book are not going to be surprises. What is going to be a little bit exciting about it is that it's written out in exacting detail with tactics, strategy, and action plans spelled out starting day one. They got plans for what the president and everybody in his administration is supposed to do on day one of the new Republican administration after he is sworn into office. As soon as he's done getting sworn into office, they already got a go plan. They got it. So the transparency and intentionality of this document are what have sparked considerable attention and what is making the expected outcomes of a Republican-controlled future clearer than I think we've ever seen. So let me give you a few key highlights on the specific goals that we are to expect from this administration. Let's do this. So I'm going to pull up this document for y'all. We're going to go right over here to this. And we're going to change from the Heritage Foundation. We're going to look at this PDF. So just so you're clear, this PDF is available freely and easily on the Heritage Foundation's website. This PDF sets the entire plan. This is the entire plan written out. This is the same thing that I referred to as being available as a book on Amazon at one point, which is suspiciously no longer available as a book on Amazon. So anyway, this is what it is. 2025 Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Promise. So we're going to go through all these different sections I have bookmarked. We're going to do it extremely quickly. First thing we're going to talk about is I mentioned that there are a lot of people that they're going to bring in that are going to replace civil servants. Civil servants traditionally are civilians who have applied and been interviewed like a traditional job and been given a role that is in a government capacity, right? You're going to be working as a civil servant, but it's like a regular job. You just work for the feds, right? You don't get appointed by nobody in a special political manner. You don't have to have a political affiliation or anything like that. It's just a civil servant job. But we're going to go to this section. Look, this thing is over 920 pages, okay? And so we're at the top of the 2025 Presidential Transition Project. And so a note on the project, and what it does is it breaks down 4 pillars. And what you need to understand is pillar number 2 is this personnel database. Pillar number 2 says, it is a personnel database that allows candidates to build their own professional profiles and our coalition members to review and voice their recommendations. These recommendations will then be collated and shared with the president-elect's team, greatly streamlining the appointment process. Okay, so now they got a whole Rolodex they're building of people who are aligned with the president's mindset, goals, and the Republican, or rather the conservative ideology. They doing something there. All right, now next thing up, what about these people? Well, they tell us a story here in this section of this book that's about creating a responsible career management service. They go on to say people elect a president who is charged by Article 2, Section 3 of the Constitution with seeing that laws are faithfully executed. You see, that's in quote. Laws should be faithfully executed with his political appointees democratically linked to that legitimizing responsibility. An autonomous bureaucracy has neither independent constitutional status nor separate moral legitimacy. Therefore, career civil servants by themselves should not lead major policy changes and reforms. So what they're saying here is this. They're saying that because the people who are actually implementing these policy changes and reforms are so critical to them being done faithfully to the intention of the president, a bureaucracy where these particular people are totally independent of the political expectations of the president or the political alignment of the president is not necessarily in good faith going to be, these people are not necessarily in good faith going to follow through with what the president has asked to be done, even if it's written in an executive order. They might do it to the bare minimum. They might try to find a way to help people skirt around it. So they're worried about that. So what they go on to say is they give this example of what happened during the last Trump presidency. They say, frustrated with activities by top career executives. These are like top executives or top management in the federal government. The Trump administration issued Executive Order 13957 to make career professionals in positions that are not normally subject to change as a result of presidential transition, but who discharge significant duties and exercise significant discretion in formulating and implementing executive branch policy and programs, an exception to the competitive hiring rules and examinations for career positions under a new Schedule F. So that whole section just basically said Executive Order 13957 was executed in order to force people who typically hang over between presidential administrations, who don't have to change in between presidential administrations, yet they are people who have significant duties and discretion in implementing presidential or executive policy and programs. We're saying, no, we can't let those folks just hang out without them being rehired or re-examined to confirm that they're going to do the job as we want them to. So we're going to issue a new Schedule F. That's what they're saying. They're saying that those folks who hang around, they might not be loyal to the new president. So this executive order ordered the director of the OPM, I'm going to say Office of People Management for now. It's actually different. I apologize. Y'all can get me in the comments. It ordered the director of OPM and agency heads to set procedures to prepare lists of such confidential, policy determining, policy making, or policy advocating positions and prepare procedures to execute exceptions from civil service rules when careerists hold such positions. from which they can relocate back to the regular civil service after such service. The order was subsequently reversed by President Biden at the demand of civil service associates and the unions. It should be reinstated, but SCS responsibility should come first. So basically all that is to say they are intending to reignite the fire under Executive Order 13957, probably on day one of the Trump administration or the Republican administration. And with that being in force, it would basically take all of these civil servants, put them on a new Schedule F, and put them up for recall at the change of the presidency. So that means these folks are going to get pushed out, and then that allows those positions to be appointed positions where the president and his executive team, his administration, can now handpick people from that Rolodex I mentioned earlier to be in these positions. Again, remember, these were positions that were typical jobs that people could apply to and get qualified for based on their own experience and merit, and then they would get the job. But now it's going to be, no, I got to know you. You got to be vetted. You got to be politically aligned, all these other things, not based on your skills and your talents and all that stuff. No, it's just based on, all that plus, what do you think about Trump? So that's that. So loyalist first is the first thing out the gate. Second thing we're going to talk about is deleting the Department of Education. So the second thing they got on the plan here is what you probably have heard in the headlines. And it's very simple. As you can see here in red, mission for the Department of Education chapter written by Lindsay M. Burke. The mission is simple. Federal education policy should be limited, and ultimately the Federal Department of Education should be eliminated. It's not really more complicated than that. They got a whole bunch of stuff they wrote here to try to justify it, and they got things that they can do in lieu of, kind of like, half steps and kind of interim plans and things like that. But in general, they just gonna delete the Department of Education. That's just going to be gone, because what they really want is our post-secondary institutions should reflect diversity. Let me read this paragraph. When power is exercised, it should empower students and families, not government. In our pluralistic society, families and students should be free to choose from a diverse set of school options and learning environments that best fit their needs. Our post-secondary institutions should also reflect such diversity, with room for not only traditional liberal arts colleges and research universities, but also faith-based institutions, career schools, military academies, and lifelong learning programs. What I think is most interesting about this is how they put faith-based institutions first on their list of inclusion, because you're going to find essentially this traditional American family concept, heterosexual concept. A lot of the concepts inside of this document are going to speak to the old, original, basic conceptual notion of a kind of how, Western life is structured, which, like we said, is a heterosexual, a nuclear family, 2 kids, and also it's Christian based, right? It's a faith-based situation, Christian, God. And so with that being the case, you're going to see a lot of that in this intentionality that's pasted all throughout this book. So we already talked about them having loyalists put in the position, and now we know the Department of Education is going to get deleted. Let's keep going. Give me my time back. So in this section here, and I'm just jumping through chapters here. There's a section here about basically labor laws, and there's an overtime pay threshold that exists. What they want to do is they essentially want to lower the threshold and make it easier for employers to not pay overtime, because they're claiming that employers who have to pay overtime are going to be less incentivized to give employees fringe benefits that could be more tax beneficial to the employee. So, and it gets a little complicated because they talk about what is the definition of regular pay, regular rate pay. So let me just read this and then I'm gonna hit this one. Overtime pay threshold. Overtime pay is one of the most challenging aspects of the Fair Labor Standards Act rules. Non-exempt workers, that is, workers whose job duties fall within the law's power or whose total pay is low enough, must be paid overtime. That is, overtime is defined as 150% of their regular rate. For every hour over 40 in a work week, Now, overtime requirements may discourage employers from offering certain fringe benefits such as reimbursement for education, childcare, or even free meals because the benefits value may be included in the regular rate that must be paid at 150% for all overtime hours. And because some of these fringe benefits may be more valuable and often come with tax preferences that benefit the worker, the goal should be to set a threshold to ensure lower income workers have the protections of overtime pay without discouraging employers from offering these benefits. It sounds good, don't it? On the surface, it sounds like, oh, they care about employees. The Department of Labor should maintain an overtime threshold that does not punish businesses in lower cost regions, i.e. the Southeast United States. Oh, now you care about the South. That sounds mighty Confederate of you. The Trump era threshold is high enough to capture most line workers in lower cost regions. So what's happening on the sidelines is that this threshold is actually scheduled to go up next year. Under Biden, it would actually increase. And again, I'm not here capping for Biden. Don't even start. But this threshold is supposed to go up. So they're already telling you we need to go back to the Trump era thresholds. Like, I don't know if the current threshold is the Trump era threshold or if it has went up since Trump, but they are already telling you we need to stay at where we are or go down on that threshold, because it's like at 40 something right now. It's going to go up to 50 something. I think maybe even 58,000 or a little under that, 53,000. And so at that threshold, anybody who's on salary and makes that amount or less is still entitled to overtime. Because one of the loopholes they're kind of pointing to is that when you put people on salary, they're no longer required to have overtime. Well, that's not exactly true. You're required to have overtime if you're below the threshold. If you're over that threshold, which again, it's in the 40s right now. If you're over that threshold and you're salaried, then you don't get overtime by law. They can give it to you, but by law, they're not required to. If you are under that threshold, then they are required to, even though they claim that you're a salaried employee and you're not hourly. So they want to maintain that overtime threshold so it doesn't punish businesses in lower cost regions, i.e. the Southeast United States. Okay. The other thing they say here in red is Congress should provide flexibilities to employers and employees to calculate the overtime period over a longer number of weeks. Specifically, employers and employees should be able to set a 2 or 4 week period over which to calculate overtime. This would give workers greater flexibility to work more hours in 1 week and fewer hours in the next, and would not require the employer to pay them more for that same total number of hours of work during that entire period. This is total BS. Let me tell you why. Well, I'm going to put it at mostly BS. It's mostly BS because in reality, what this allows employers to do is say they have a really busy week. Let's say you work at Chipotle and they're getting slammed this week because there's some soccer game across the street this week. And so it's like a soccer tournament that's going on for 4 days. And so you're in there, you don't work like 70 hours this week. But then they say, you know what, we're going to let you work 70 hours this week, but next week we're going to have you work 20 hours. So then it's going to even out and you're going to have work 90 hours across 2 weeks. So you'll be at 45. Let's say, we're going to give you 10 hours. Yeah, we're not going to let that happen. So now you add 70 hours 1 week. Now you add another 80 with the 10 on the next week, and 80 with 10 on the next week. And so now you're at 40 hours cap. Is that fair? Is that fair? Is that fair? Remind me. So you tell me, maybe you cool with that. Maybe you're not. I'm just kind of like, they said that they can negotiate. What they love to say is that this gives workers greater flexibility to work more hours in 1 week and fewer in the next, and would not require the employer. That's as if the employer is going to give them the choice to choose which of the strategies that employer is going to use. That employer may very well say, no, how we do it over here now is that we do it on a rotating 2 week schedule. So you might work 70 hours 1 week, but the next week you might work 10. That actually defeats the whole purpose of overtime, because if you're working more than 40 hours in 1 week, you're getting worn out. You at 50, 60 hours in 1 week, you're starting to get worn out. So you're working 70 hours in 1 week because of a soccer game across the street and you work at Chipotle, but they're going to give you the rest of the next week off pretty much, and you just going to get straight time pay. I think that avoids the point, because you really done a number on your body. Your body can recover the next week to a little bit of degree because you're just resting. But in honesty, right? You work 70, you got that 80, you got the same amount of pay, but you had to work 3 times as hard. No, that defeats the point. So they out here capping for these corporations. That's what this is. Let's go to the next one, sexual discrimination. So you have another section here. We talk about sexual discrimination. And Biden administration, LGBTQ advocates in some federal courts have attempted to expand the scope and definition of sex discrimination based in part on the Supreme Court's decision in Bostock versus Clayton County. Yeah, we go through all of this. But here's what they want to do. They want to rescind regulations prohibiting discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, transgender status, and sex characteristics. Y'all, I'm reading it straight off their document. I ain't even listen. I don't even need to try to do anything else. I can just read off their document. They're going to rescind regulations prohibiting discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, transgender status, and sex characteristics. The president should direct agencies to rescind regulations interpreting sex discrimination provisions as prohibiting discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity. They just repeated themselves. Okay. And then the other bullet point of interest is directing agencies to refocus enforcement of sex discrimination laws. The president should direct agencies to focus their enforcement of sex discrimination laws on the biological binary meaning of sex. So what they're really doing is not only are they rescinding the ability to protect people from sexual discrimination in the workplace, they are now also like, we don't even understand anybody except a man or a woman. And honestly, there's another section in here that also defines that a man is a man at birth and he can't be nothing else later, and a woman is a woman at birth and she can't be nothing else later. They'll be like, it's binary and it's based on your birth certificate. Don't come to me with nothing else. That's what they got in this document. So that's sexual discrimination. Dirty baby formula. Let's talk about dirty baby formula. So in this section where they talk about a lot of social programs, specifically like WIC and SNAP, they got a little bullet point here that's really interesting. It says reevaluate excessive regulations. You ever heard about the conservatives or the Republicans being really eager to deregulate things? This is an example of that. Reevaluate excessive regulation. Ask for baby formula regulations generally. Labeling regulations and regulations that unnecessarily delay the manufacture and sale of baby formula should be reevaluated. During the Biden administration, there have been devastating baby formula shortages. The reason why they're talking about this is, basically it says reevaluate excessive regulations. That's code for we want to deregulate the baby formula space. Listen, it's already hard enough to get some clean fruit and vegetables at a Kroger. You got to pay for the organic stuff if you want to know that it's truly clean. Don't even start on the Whole Foods. And people just have to get what they can afford. But one thing I don't know that everybody's going to sign up for is like deregulating baby formula, because I think the babies need the best they can get, because that's like when they're most vulnerable. They're too young to be able to defend off of some minor little baby virus that you done let into the baby formula because we deregulated them from having to clean. If you remember back to what happened when the baby formula crisis hit, the situation was basically, if I remember correctly, they had some plants that had to stop production because they had an issue where they couldn't just make the formula because they would have made it in a way that didn't comply with federal regulations for cleanliness and inspection. They had an incident. So the regulations forced them to work through the proper steps to ensure that what they would produce would be safe. That's why they want to do deregulation, because of course nobody who's running a baby formula factory cares that much about doing anything to protect the baby short of not being sued and not having their brand get tarnished. As long as their brand doesn't get tarnished and they don't get sued and they still getting sales, they good. After the babies get a little cold because they had your baby formula that was made on equipment that wasn't 1,000% clean, right? All right, next one. Kids working dangerous jobs. We got a lot of good stuff in here, y'all. A lot of good stuff. So here's a section here about education and vocational training. And there's a section here where there's a really nice bullet point. And I'm going to do my best. You're going to see me drink a little bit of this Spindrift. I'm going to do my best to explain this one to you, because there's a little bit of text here and you need to hear it exactly as it was written. Hazard order regulations. Some young adults show an interest in inherently dangerous jobs. Current rules forbid many young people, even if their family is running the business, from working in such jobs. This results in worker shortages in dangerous fields and often discourages otherwise interested young workers from trying the more dangerous job. With parental consent and proper training, certain young adults should be allowed to work and learn and work in more dangerous occupations. This would give a green light to training programs and build skills in teenagers who may want to work in these fields. As a result, the Department of Labor should amend its hazard order regulations to permit teenage workers access to work in regulated jobs with proper training and parental consent. I had to hit y'all with the voice because these boys just said, let the teenagers work the dangerous jobs if they want to. All right, I mean, whatever. Y'all take from that what you will. All right, going on to some more stuff. They got a section here, Department of Commerce. They talk about some stuff, but they got a really interesting two really interesting bullet points. The first one is they want the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, or USPTO, to be made into a performance-based organization under the Office of Management and Budget, OMB. So to be clear, the USPTO is the Patent and Trademark Office. These are the people who you send in your patent and your trademark into. They stamp it, they approve it, they say, yeah, you're not copying anything anyone else is doing. This is now yours. Nobody else can copy what you're doing. Okay, great. That organization is notoriously slow. They don't do a great job at getting back to you very quickly. And that's known. And so that's why you have all the proliferation of those crazy brands on Amazon, because they need to come up with something so uniquely crazy that it can get through the USPTO process. Look it up. There's a whole entire thing about that. That's why you got them crazy brands on Amazon. However, the Heritage Foundation with Project 2025 wants the USPTO to become a performance-based organization. So what's the issue with that, Darville? A performance-based organization is a discrete management unit. It's a unit of a business. So in a sense, we're talking about the USPTO become its own unit with strong incentives to manage for results. So it's going to be a results-oriented organization. They are supposed to be looking at these patents and these trademarks to make sure they're not violating existing patents and trademarks. That's not a performance-based organization, and it probably shouldn't be. But it commits to specific measurable goals with targets for improved performance. In exchange, it's granted managerial flexibilities to get the job done to hit the metrics. What we called that at a lovely organization I used to work at, we called it metric-driven behavior. Metric-driven behavior causes a lot of problems. You want quality-minded behavior. You want them to be quick, but you need to optimize the processes so that doing a quality job takes less time. You don't just force it through to hit a time target. So that's kind of a problem. Also, the one that's even more interesting in here is their request or mandate that the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA or NOAA, should be dismantled and many of its functions eliminated, sent to other agencies, privatized, or placed under the control of states and territories. So the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, is responsible for a little department called the National Weather Service. You know, the people who tell you when a tornado's showing up. You know, the people who tell you when the flood is coming, people who tell you the hurricane's on the way, those folks. They want to dismantle that. And they want to send it to the states, or they want to privatize it, or send it to another agency. What agency can you think of that could be really good other than NOAA for the National Weather Service? I'm working to understand that. Let me know. Anyway, let's keep it going. More civil rights into the Justice Department. They want to move civil rights into the Justice Department. So we're in a section here where they are really working hard as heck with all these graphs and stuff to explain why the Department of Education shouldn't exist. But while they're doing that, they also say something real quick. They say the The Office for Civil Rights, or OCR, should move to the Department of Justice. The federal government has an essential responsibility to enforce civil rights protections, but Washington should do so through the Department of Justice and federal courts. The OCR at the DOJ should be able to enforce only through litigation. So what they're saying is that when the Office for Civil Rights is notified of a civil rights violation, they have to take you to court in order to enforce some type of corrective action or to force the organization who's offending to do the right thing. That's a lot of freaking work to always have to go to court just to fix something. That's why civil rights organizations, or rather the Office for Civil Rights, needs to be able to do direct enforcement and work with other organizations to levy punitive impacts to organizations and people who are committing civil rights violations. They can eventually refer the case to the Department of Justice for actual prosecution, which is basically what they do in the egregious cases. But to say that the enforcement's purely going to be through litigation, that this whole thing right here that they put in this document, this whole statement right here, the whole essence here is to slow down the delivery of justice in civil rights violations. They don't want you to be able to get the Office of Civil Rights involved in a readily way. They want to force them to go through the filter, the couch, the concrete, and the bushes before they can help you. So that's what they're doing. Let's go to the next one. Now we're over here. We're still in education. We're still looking at families and things like that. And so, listen, we got one here. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. You're probably going to think it's pretty cool, I guess. Maybe they want to eliminate Head Start. Eliminate the Head Start program. Head Start, originally established and funded to support low-income families, is fraught with scandal and abuse. With a budget of more than $11 billion, the program should function to protect and educate minors. Sadly, it has done exactly the opposite. In fact, approximately 1 in 4 grant recipients had incidents in which children were abused, left unsupervised, or released to an unauthorized person between October 2015 and May 2020. Research has demonstrated that federal Head Start centers, which provide preschool care to children from low-income families, have little or no long-term academic value for children. Given its unaddressed crisis of rampant abuse and lack of positive outcomes, the program should be eliminated along with the entire Head Start office. At the very least, though, the program's COVID-19 vaccine and mask requirements should be rescinded. These boys is goofy. They go all the way from delete the whole office to, well, if we can't delete the office, just make sure they rescind the COVID-19 vaccine and mask mandate. That's a big jump. That's a big jump. But anyway, I will tell you that partially this ain't true. But they're kind of miscasting the effectiveness of Head Start. Head Start is effective, and Head Start is a necessary program for children. It especially helps them out when they get right into their first year of grade school, elementary, first grade. The Head Start helps them, right? It's a Head Start. It doesn't mean that when you turn 13, you're going to have benefits from Head Start still lingering around. It doesn't mean that. But in general, deleting Head Start is a goofy move. Let's keep it moving. They're not done with people. They really want to eviscerate people's ability to live a healthy, wholesome life. So they're going after the veterans now. And so now we're in here talking about the VA. And they have a section here where they say the next administration should explore how the VASRD, or VASRD, which is the Veterans Affairs Schedule for Rating Disabilities. It's used by the Department of Veteran Affairs as part of the process for adjudicating disability claims. It is a guide for evaluating the severity of disabilities. And what it does is it takes the degree of the disability as a severity expressed in a percentage, and then that relates or is correlated to the amount of money you get per month. So basically the VASRD is a schedule of, if you have this disability due to your military service, then you get this amount of money. So it's think of it as a table. I've never seen it before, so correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, the VASRD, they want the administration to explore how VASRD reviews could be accelerated with clearance from the OMB to target significant savings from revising disability rating awards for future claimants while preserving them fully or partially for existing claimants. What they're saying is that they want to reduce the cost to the administration by revising the disability ratings and revising essentially the amount of money you get for whatever injury you have as a result of your military service. They want to reduce it so they can save money. Okay. And also, the VBA, or Veterans Benefit Administration, needs more world-class contractor support. Currently, few of the top companies have contracts with the VBA, and the VBA needs to conduct more outreach to the private sector through senior leadership engagement and industry conferences. So what they're doing here, and they have another statement here, more contractors to process claims. What they're doing here is they're doing a kickback to their buddies. So a lot of these folks tend to have interests with big corporations or companies that are owned by their buddies or other conservatives. And so what they're doing is saying, you need to hire more contractors, which means you need to get with these other companies that we know the owners of and get them involved and get them to send you some contractors so they can get part of this federal pie. Why don't you just implement more technological advancements to improve the claim approval process and do other things to help the people who currently are employed by the government do their claims faster instead of having to call in a bunch of contractors because you want your contractor buddies to get money? Anyway, we're going to keep the fun going. We're over halfway there, y'all. We got our new section, can't mail abortion pills. Yep, they were coming for the abortion. Announcing a campaign to enforce criminal prohibitions in 18 U.S. Code Section 1461 and 1462 against providers and distributors of abortion pills that use the mail. Federal law prohibits mailing every article, instrument, substance, drug, medicine, or thing which is advertised or described in a manner calculated to lead another to use or apply it for producing abortion. Following the Supreme Court's decision in Dobbs, there is now no federal prohibition on the enforcement of this statute. The Department of Justice and the next conservative administration would therefore announce its intent to enforce federal law against providers and distributors of such pills. They're basically saying they ain't gonna let you mail no abortion pills to nobody. You can't do that. With the Dobbs decision, there's nothing preventing them from enforcing this, but the Biden administration's not enforcing. They're like, we're not stopping people from getting abortion pills. Hey, if they have their way with this document, Trump's people are gonna stop you real quick. That's probably gonna be day 2. They ain't gonna do it on day 1 because they could be too busy moving the furniture into the office out of Mar-a-Lago. Let's get to the next one. They're gonna just go, listen. They got, they banned the abortion pills from getting mailed. But if they can have their way, they're gonna go ahead and just ban all the abortion pills anyway. So you can't mail them at a minimum, but at best case scenario to them, you ain't got no pills to mail. So reverse its approval of chemical abortion drugs because the politicized approval process was illegal from the start. The context here is that the FDA failed to abide by its legal obligations to protect the health, safety, and welfare of girls and women. It never studied the safety of drugs under the labeled conditions of use, ignored the potential impacts of hormone-blocking regimen on the developing bodies of adolescent girls, disregarded substantial evidence that chemical abortion drugs cause more complications than surgical abortions, and eliminated necessary safeguards for pregnant girls and women who undergo this dangerous drug regimen. Furthermore, at no point in the past 2 decades has the FDA ever acknowledged or addressed federal laws that prohibit the distribution of abortion drugs by postal mail. To the contrary, the FDA has permitted and actively encouraged such activity. So yeah, they're gonna get rid of these. They're gonna reverse their approval of chemical abortion drugs. So you ain't gonna have no pills to mail, no way. Keeping it moving. No disparate impact. So this should be especially important to the Black community. Basically, I'm not going to go through the details on this because it gets a little murky and there's different ways they've addressed it throughout the document. They essentially want the doctrine of disparate impact to be ended. They want that to be thrown in the trash. Disparate impact, as you know, is how we prove that, I don't know if it's in here. Basically, disparate impact is how we prove that discrimination is afoot in a situation where it may be hard to see it due to other lack of evidence. Essentially, a lacking of clear, blatant smoking gun. I said I don't want you hired, or you can't do this, or you are being taken out back because you're Black. evidence. If you don't have that, then you have to look at disparate impact, because that's how they start to hide what they do across time or over time to specific groups of people. You have to look at the data and see that an activity, a policy, a procedure, a job, a manager, whomever, whatever's at question, you got to look at the outcomes around different types of groupings of people and see if there is a particular group that has a disparate impact due to this activity. And so usually you can look at policies and programs that the federal government has implemented all the way going back from the 1900s all the way forward through to 1990 and beyond, and you can see disparate impacts that have negatively impacted the Black community or left the Black community out or have served other communities in essence beyond, above, head and shoulders of the Black community. So community wise, racial wise, however you do it, disparate impact is something that you are able to discern through the data. And so they want to get rid of that doctrine. They said the courts have ruled that without even evidence of overt intentional discrimination, such results might still suggest discrimination. The doctrine of disparate impact could be ended legislatively or at least narrowed through the regulatory process by a future administration. They really don't like disparate impact. Going forward, punishing the bad children. Let's talk about punishment of children within schools. They love to regulate schools because they want to get rid of the Department of Education. They want to let all these schools do whatever they want to so that they can pay for the schools that they want to go to. And we're going to end up in the schools that they run. Well, the states run, because the federal government don't want to run it under the Trump administration, according to these guys. However, assuring a safe and orderly school environment should be the primary consideration for school leaders and district administrators. Unfortunately, a federal overreach has pushed many school leaders to prioritize the pursuit of racial parity in school discipline indicators, such as detentions, suspensions, and expulsions, over student safety. In 2014, the Obama administration issued a Dear Colleague letter that muddied the standard for civil rights enforcement under Title VI for student discipline cases. Before the DCL or the Dear Colleague letter, a school would be in violation of federal law for treating Black and white students differently for the same offense. Under the Obama administration, schools were at risk of losing federal funding if they treated Black and white students equally, but had aggregate differences in the rates of school discipline by race. Disparate impact. Remember, we talked about that. OCR leveraged federal civil rights investigations as policy enforcement tools. These investigations could only end when school districts agreed to adopt lenient discipline policies, commonly known as restorative justice. Academic studies, as well as student and teacher surveys, suggest that academics and school climate have been harmed substantially by this push. The Trump administration rescinded the Obama administration's guidance on school discipline and corrected the Obama administration's overreach in the Title VI enforcement. And let me confirm, because I might not be right on that. That's actually, that's 6. So they basically want it so that essentially we cannot peer in using disparate impact and understand if schools are doing things to students of particular designation, whether it be race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or gender identity, whatever, in order to determine if these schools are behaving or conducting themselves appropriately. They want to get rid of all of that. So nothing new there. We already knew that. Let's keep it moving. The last one is federal student loans, and this is a big one. So in this section of Project 2025, as we just scroll through here, under higher education reform, they got a lot of things they want to say. They got a lot of things they want to do. But one of them is this: the federal government does not have the proper incentives to make sound lending decisions. The new administration should consider privatizing all lending programs, including subsidized, unsubsidized, and plus loans, both grad and parent. This would allow for market prices and signals to influence educational borrowing, introducing consumer-driven accountability into higher education. They want Pell Grants to stay the same. Oh, but they're not done. If privatizing student lending is not feasible, then the next administration should consider the following reforms. Switch to fair value accounting from FCRA accounting. consolidate all federal loan programs into one new program that A, utilizes income-based repayment, B, includes no interest rate subsidies or loan forgiveness, C, includes annual and aggregate limits on borrowing, and D, includes skin in the game to hold colleges accountable. And then they also want to eliminate grad plus loans for graduate students and parent plus loans for parents of undergraduates. Yeah, y'all ain't gonna be able to go to school no more. Let these folks run it. Ain't nobody going to school no more. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's what's going on. So listen, y'all. This document is really a call to action for conservatives. It's a super duper playbook, over 900 pages. And it's acting as not only that, but it's also a warning to liberals and Democrats about what's at stake. You should read this and you should understand that this is no longer fear-mongering. This is not fear-mongering. This is a clear presentation of their intentions. These folks are dead serious. And I'm not here to act like I'm crazy or to look like I got tinfoil kufi. I just showed you the PDF. I just showed you the document that they wrote and put on the internet for free 99 for you to download, but they put it in a book 2 years ago. These boys have had this ink dried since Trump was defeated. This ink is dried. So now what's the dealio? Well, they want to get this into play, and they dead serious. And I'm going to show you how dead serious they are. I'm going to show you a little video clip. Let's see how dead serious these boys is. Watch this. It's going to be about a minute or two.
The radical left. You and I have both been parts of faculties and faculty senates and understand that the left has taken over our institutions. The reason that they are apoplectic right now, the reason that so many anchors on MSNBC, for example, are losing their minds daily is because our side is winning. And so I come full circle in this response and just want to encourage you with some substance that we are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be.
Right on.
Yo, he said Second American Revolution, and it can be bloodless if the left allows it to be. These boys ain't playing no games, I'm telling y'all right now. Talk about bloodless. This man is making a freaking physical threat on people if they get in the way of their little agenda that I just read a bunch of clips from. Listen. Here's my personal reflection. This is scary. I'll be honest with you, straight up 130. I ain't seen nothing like this before because it's black and white. It's a full 180 of some of the most, it's pulling a full 180 on some of the most equity-seeking and socially supportive aspects of the United States of America that we've been used to and that we pursued. Whether you be a Gen Z, millennial, Gen Xer, you've always wanted this to be an inclusive, equitable, and supportive nation. This document right now does not look like that. It does not account for any of that. Matter of fact, it strips away everything that we built through all the Republican and Democratic administrations of the past. It will hurt everyone, except those who already drink the Kool-Aid, I suppose. And when people ask me what I think about this project, I'm honestly like, at this point, I'm like, heck no. This can't be life. This can't be real. This is like, forget dystopian, forget draconian, forget your wildest dreams. You heard that man. That was like the president of the Heritage Foundation. He's up there. That's how dedicated these folks is. And you already know what happened with the J6. I think they're looking at J6 level activities if they don't get what they want. This can't be life. It's a clear laid out plan by some people being friendly right now. But they're hell-bent on living in a crazy dystopian universe that serves them. And it's starting to see such a meticulous plan laid out already before the election in this PDF. So For those of us who are, black first political mindset, and for Democrats nationwide, honestly, the lack of a comparable Democratic playbook is even more concerning. Well, I'm not going to say it's even more concerning, but it's concerning too. It's just like, well, why don't we have one to push back against with this? Why don't we have something that reaffirms that people, hey, when Biden gets reelected or whoever gets elected from the Democratic Party, we got a game plan to continue moving forward. We're not just going to stand where we are, because a lot of people are disappointed where we are. So that's why that's why he even said, the left is upset because they know we're winning and we're going to win. That's why he said that, because we ain't even got a playbook our own selves. And that makes their plan even more of a threat, because it's even more likely to become real. And I love this quote, as Antonio Moore said, the reality is really this, and I quote Antonio, Biden really doesn't have a campaign. He's just kind of patching things together, and he's not Trump. That's the truth. That's the dead truth. And that's why he's at such a great risk of losing. He has not accomplished or led any black policies, and he isn't promising to do so. So the black community may very well let him lose just on GP, because he said, you had my back, I got yours, and y'all saved me when I was at my lowest. And yeah, we did. And now we need, as some people say, tangibles. I say transformative politics, reparative justice. You know what I'm talking about. You know what my position has been. So now, knowing about this mess, I don't know, fam. I don't know. This is wild stuff, man. They gonna go to work on day one. Shoot, they probably gonna be at the White House steps 20 hours before. They gonna be there early. They gonna pull up early, and they're gonna have bag McDonald's just sitting in the parking lot waiting for somebody to unlock the door. Listen, the Democrats need to get serious. They keep playing with the black community. They keep playing with folks who need things that are reasonable. I'll be honest with you, in this document, there were some reasonable suggestions for improving the function of the federal government. They had things like improving technology. They had things like reducing bloat and bureaucracy. They had some stuff in there. They had some common sense things that even Biden low-key will probably do, but he won't announce it like that, because some people even say Biden's kind of milquetoast in terms of being liberal. So in reality, he might be low-key conservative. But shoot, I know everybody will prefer that over what's in this playbook here, but they keep playing with us. And the problem is the Democrats cannot afford to play with the black community. America cannot afford to play with the black community, because you could end up with this playbook at your front door as your phone book. It could be what this going down for the next 4 years. You keep playing with us. And I'm not here to try to demonize anybody, but political voting is serious, and a lot is at stake. We need to negotiate and push for agreements with these candidates before giving them our vote. Remember, you can't hold anyone accountable for something they never promised in writing. You need to make your vote count by ensuring it aligns with your values and your demands for yourself and your future community and your community now, and ensure that those future actions are things that they will do, or they will do their damn best to carry out for you. But at the same time, this is what's at stake. What I just showed you today. My voice won't get out to everyone, so share this video and encourage them to watch mine and others' analyses of this conservative plan. People will not and no longer should just show up to vote because there's a boogeyman in the corner. Unfortunately, time has run out on the boogeyman play. And these boys showed up at the right time with this book. And it's crazy, ironic, that this is the crossroads we've arrived at. And I can't blame no one but the Democrats. I'm not saying that the Republicans didn't write this or the conservatives didn't write this. I'm not saying that the Democrats are the people who wrote this document. What I'm saying is, when you play with your constituents who've been the most loyal, you can find yourself in a position where when you need them the most, they're there the least. That goes for everything in life, right? You never know when you need people. Now, you can say the black community needs the Democrats even more, given how crazy this stuff in this document is and this plan is. And I'm not here to tell you that I want any of this stuff to become fruition. But at the same time, this country has been ran by a bunch of people who have not been us. So this may not be our fight. We come in when we think we should be there, but honestly, we've learned that we aren't part of the discussion at all. We've never been part of it fruitfully, because if we were part of it fruitfully, we would have the policies and protections we've always needed. But we still don't have them, so we know that this has been a game. The Democrats have kept this act up, and it's starting to show its head, and now the black community is uncommitted and wavering. As a result, the Democrats are putting the entire liberty of this nation at jeopardy, because their most loyal faction has been played with and lied to repeatedly, and we're over it. Now, every Asian, Latino, white person, whoever you can conjure up that considers themselves liberal or Democrat or even enjoys their freedoms, that wants reasonable immigration, wants reasonable productive rights for women, wants, all these things. Not just, let me back up, not just reasonable reproductive rights for women, but just reproductive rights. All these things are going to go out the window like dead weight on a spaceship. Time is nearly up, and Biden can't even remember what he's supposed to be talking about on stage. And they done just dropped this. They said, here, this is what we're about to do. And dude did that interview. He said, we dead serious. And again, they've proven it to us nothing less. Between Trump, J6, the Heritage Foundation dude, they've proven nothing less than that they are coming with all guns blazing. So we really need to think clearly, decisively, tactically, and strategically about what we're going to do from this point forward. That's all I got right now, y'all. Please be safe. Please make sure you are registered to vote. You must vote, even if it's down ballot Democrat. Listen, that's what I'm going to do. Down ballot Democrat. Because we got to protect ourselves at this point. But that presidential slot, we still got discussions. I hate to say that, but it sounds crazy. I don't want to put us in jeopardy, but I think we need to talk about why and understand what we're going to do next time, because there could always be the same exact play waiting around the corner from the Republicans. You think this program's going to go away just because Trump doesn't get elected? They're going to bring it back up, call it, 2020, 2029? Project 2029 is just a copy and paste of 2025? Better watch out.